Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time we're going to be going over our official predictions for a potential September Nintendo Direct. That's right, we're doing predictions before there's actually been a confirmation for a Nintendo Direct. We usually do this isn't really anything too out of the ordinary, but the reason why we are making this Direct predictions video is because we, and by we I mean me, I don't know why I do the third person thing, I guess there's the cardboard Charmander that rarely talks anymore. But anyway, the reason I'm doing this predictions video is because I do strongly believe that there will be a Direct in September. Now, I could be wrong, but the reason why I think there's going to be a September Nintendo Direct is because in 2017, there was a September Nintendo Direct. In 2018, there was a September Nintendo Direct. In 2019, there was a September Nintendo Direct. Now, when I say Nintendo Directs, I'm talking about the big general directs, not minis, big general directs. However, in 2020, we didn't have any big general Nintendo Directs. But in September, we did get the biggest amount of information we got throughout the entire year in 2020. We got the Super Mario Anniversary Direct during that time, and we also got a Direct Mini Partner Showcase, which revealed Monster Hunter Rise, a really big release for this year, and we got the announcements for Pikmin 3 Deluxe and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, if memory serves me right. It was a big month for reveals last year in September. So with the last 4 years in mind, the pattern has been set. Septembers usually yield a great deal of Nintendo news, usually in the form of some sort of major direct that exceeds 35 plus minutes. So, are we going to be getting something like that this year as well? I think so, hence why we're making this video. I think it is very likely, and there's a few other reasons why. Metroid Dread is coming out October 8th. If you've been paying attention, Nintendo's been hard pushing and marketing Metroid Dread since its reveal at E3. I don't think they're going to miss another opportunity with a big general direct to market this game. They are going to do that. So I think it's another reason to think that we'll be seeing a direct in September to give that game one more big push before it comes out at the beginning of October. But then also, September 10th, we are getting WarioWare. They probably want to give that game a bit of a push as well. So potentially that could be a hint towards when we see this actual Nintendo Direct. And I think it could very well happen next week on the 8th or the 9th of September. Around then, Wednesday or Thursday, that's usually when we see the Nintendo Directs. Around that, I can kind of see it. They talk about WarioWare, they talk about Metroid Dread, and a whole bunch of other things. That way those games can get a bit more of a push and people are aware of them and they sell better when they come out less than a month from now or about a month from now. So I think it makes sense for the Direct to happen around that time, and we're going to be going into all of my predictions for this in this video. Now before we jump into all my predictions, let me first tell you about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen. You can check that all out. It is linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe. So for the first prediction, beyond just the timing of things, I predict that the Direct will open up with a Smash reveal. Why? Because pretty much every major Direct opens up with a Smash reveal. This should come as no surprise. That's what I'm thinking. I think it makes a lot of sense. However, this will be the final Smash reveal. Sakurai has told us on multiple occasions that the Fighters Pass is ending, the Smash DLC is ending, and the final character is due to come out before the end of the year, and this September Direct will likely be the final big Direct before the end of the year, the final general one. So this is the time to do it. It's been a few months since June when they revealed the last character. Timing-wise, it really makes sense right now. The only other opportunity I can see for Nintendo to sort of announce the next or the final Smash character would be at the Game Awards in December, but that would be a very, very large window between June and December. They usually don't wait that long, so I'm thinking September is a time for it to happen. But who will that character be? Well, there's a whole bunch of videos out there, some from myself, others from other people, speculating on who this character could be. I don't know who this character is going to be, but I will tell you a few things that are on my mind. I would love it for it to be Rayman, because I feel like Rayman would make so much sense from a legacy perspective. Nintendo and Ubisoft have such a great relationship. That would be great to see. But of course, there are so many possibilities. Rayman is just one of many. There's so many other directions they could go. Now, one thing that's been sort of sticking in my mind recently is potentially a Metroid character. Nintendo has been hard pushing and marketing Metroid, and we've seen it with the commercials, with the trailers, with reports, with the treehouses, with the big focus at E3, and with Switch OLED as well, it coming out the same day as Metroid Dread on October 8th. It does feel like Nintendo is setting up a big marketing push here, and potentially they might want to give it a little bit more of a push with possibly a Smash character in there. Who could the Smash character be? Samus is already there, Ridley's already there, Dark Samus is already there. Who else could they add? Well, with Metroid Dread, they are showcasing quite a few new things. You have the Emmy, and more recently, they showed off the Chozo Warrior, who's being painted as the main antagonist for Metroid Dread. This character is being featured very prominently with the marketing for Metroid Dread right now. This character seems to have a very interesting history and is incredibly powerful. It's being touted, or he or it is being touted as the most powerful adversary Samus has ever had. So this character is a big deal. And potentially this character could be the final Smash reveal. There's certainly a lot of moveset potential there, and we have seen Nintendo use different Smash characters to market their games. Look at Byleth from Fire Emblem Three Houses, for example, which is one of many examples. So potentially, the Chozo Warrior from Metroid Dread could be the final Smash character, and that would certainly be a nice little thing to do to hype people up for Metroid Dread, get more people interested in the game right before its release. But similar to Rayman, it's just one of many options. So it could be in something entirely different. Which brings me to another character that I've been discussing recently that I could kind of see happening. And that's Master Chief. Now I understand. We already have Minecraft Steve and Alex. We already have Banjo and Kazooie. Technically these characters are owned by Microsoft. They weren't originally Microsoft characters, but they are owned by Microsoft. Nintendo and Microsoft had to collaborate together to get these characters into Smash Brothers. So technically, we already have a couple Microsoft representatives in Smash Brothers. How could Microsoft get another? Well, Microsoft wasn't involved in the past, and Nintendo and Microsoft have been very, very buddy as of late. We've seen so many different things happen between them, and there's been a lot of teasing throughout the different social media platforms for Microsoft all throughout the year that something else is coming, and rumor has it that we'll be learning about this special collaboration this fall. September is kind of in line with that potentially. Now recently, Phil Spencer told us that we will not be seeing Game Pass come to Switch, so maybe it's not Game Pass coming to Switch. It could be something else. But what could be that something else that would be big enough to sort of warrant all this teasing, that would be sort of going beyond what we've already seen between Nintendo and Microsoft, that could be announced around this fall time, potentially in the September Direct? Well, Master Chief in Smash Brothers, a true original Microsoft character, would fit the bill. That would be a big deal, especially if it's in conjunction with an announcement for, say, like the Master Chief Collection coming to Switch, which would all be fantastic marketing for Halo Infinite coming out later this holiday on Xbox and Game Pass platforms. Like, that could be what's going on here, and I think that would be pretty awesome. It could work out really well. But again, like Rayman, like the Chozo Warrior, it's just one of a few different possibilities here. So we'll see what happens, but those are my thoughts on the potential final Smash character right before potentially we get this announcement of a Direct. But moving past the Smash and Microsoft stuff, what else should we maybe expect from this Direct? Well, I'm thinking that Nintendo will likely talk about some online update to Nintendo Switch Online. September is the time when there's a lot of renewals for Nintendo Switch Online because that's when it initially released. Usually see some sort of announcement or update around this time. Maybe we get more legacy content, maybe we get a few sort of Nintendo Online exclusive games or content. Something like that could happen around now. Now, there's been rumors that we could be seeing some sort of legacy content update. I've been thinking that we will be seeing some sort of update to Nintendo Online with maybe Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. I think that would actually work out really well because, well, Metroid Dread is coming out at the beginning of October. What if we got to play Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Fusion and Metroid 2 from the different Game Boy libraries on Nintendo Switch Online to hype up Metroid Dread? That way, almost every Metroid game is available on the Switch eShop in some way. I think that would work out really well. I think a lot of people would really buy into that. A lot of people who are hyped for Metroid might get into Nintendo Switch Online just for that reason alone, and I think it would be a great idea. And there would be other games added as well. There's a whole bunch of different Nintendo games like Kirby, Zelda, Mario that they could also throw in there. Not everything would come out all at once. For example, they may hold off on Advance Wars because we are getting Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp later this year, so they might hold off on a few different games, but there's still a lot they could add from both Game Boy and Game Boy Advance that would certainly make Nintendo Online that much more inviting and would keep more people invested in Nintendo Switch Online, or would get new people in if they want to play some of those Metroid games or the other things that are there. But beyond legacy content, there's a few other ideas I have. I heard at one point that maybe there would be some sort of Kirby eShop game coming out. It wasn't announced at E3. I could see it maybe getting announced during the September Direct. That's what I heard. I'm not 100% convinced it's going to happen, but you know what? I'll make it a prediction. I think we'll get some sort of Kirby announcement in this Direct. Now, I'm not necessarily alluding to the big Kirby game that's coming eventually, but you know what? That also has a good chance to be announced during this Direct. It may be announced sometime next year, early next year instead or something, or maybe next E3. But I do feel like we are within a year of a major Kirby announcement. But going back to Nintendo Online, potentially we get another sort of Kirby Online game announced that will be compatible with Nintendo Switch Online. I know I already touched on the Microsoft stuff, but I'm just going to put it out there that it's possible that Phil Spencer was just pulling a fast one on us, and there will be some sort of adapted Game Pass added to Nintendo Switch Online that maybe just includes like Microsoft-related things like Rare games and things like that and Halo, but not all the other third-party stuff. That way it doesn't really get in the way of the other games already available on the eShop. Maybe that's possible, like an adapted version of Game Pass or xCloud or what have you. I'm not saying it's super likely, but I'm at least putting it out there as a possibility. But also I could see that being something that's maybe added years down the line, maybe for Nintendo's next big system, maybe. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because there is still that rumor of some sort of collaboration between Nintendo and Microsoft, and I still think it's at least a possibility. But continuing on with the different online stuff, I do think there's a decent chance we could see an announcement for some sort of test fire for Splatoon 3. I actually think Splatoon 3 is not that far off. Potentially we see it as early as March 2022 in terms of it releasing, and if not, then by summer. And I feel like Nintendo should start talking about that game. They didn't mention it at all at E3, but it did give us quite a bit of a trailer with a whole bunch of different aspects of that game at the beginning of the year. So I do feel like the game is fairly far into development, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's the game Nintendo uses to close out the fiscal year. Splatoon 2 sold over 12+ million. It certainly has a sales potential to really fill up that time period. And on top of that, with Smash now ending, they're going to need a game that's getting recurring updates that could hype fans up. And they also may want to have something that will further compel fans to be using Nintendo Online, because with the lack of DLC characters coming, Smash Ultimate may not have as many legs online, so they're going to want another game to be featured more prominently. And Splatoon 2 has also died off a fair bit as well. So Splatoon 3 certainly is quite a candidate there to push to maintain Nintendo Online membership. So putting out a test fire, hyping up the game during this Direct, I think would be a great idea, and it could be quite a beginning to the lead up to the hype cycle for Splatoon 3 if it does launch, say, March of 2022. In other words, Splatoon 3 is going to be a big focus for the Direct, in my opinion. That is a prediction. Obviously, I could be wrong, but it is slated to come out in 2022, so I do feel like there's a decent chance we see some news on the game during this Direct. But some of you watching may be wondering, why am I saying Splatoon 3 is going to be the focus of the Direct? Why can't it be, say, for example, Breath of the Wild 2? Well, I personally think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out later into 2022 at this point. The way it was presented at E3 and the way things are going out with different release dates and such, right now my vibe, my gut feeling, is that Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out for the holiday. Usually big Zelda games are safe for the holiday. I know a lot of people like to point towards Breath of the Wild, which came out March of 2017, but I think it's worth noting that Breath of the Wild wasn't supposed to come out March of 2017. It was delayed to that time for a few different reasons. There was a Switch coming out, and then also there was localization between the Wii U version and the Switch version. So the game came out a few months later. It was meant to come out November 2016. If there wasn't the Switch and localization needed to be done, I believe Breath of the Wild would have come out on Wii U November 2016, which is in line with pretty much any other major release for Zelda in recent history. So I think it's more likely to think that Breath of the Wild 2 is a holiday 2022 release, but we shall see. if the Direct ends up having Zelda information, then maybe Breath of the Wild 2 could be that big fiscal year ending game and we see it actually March of this year. But if we don't see Breath of the Wild 2 mentioned at all during this Direct, well then I think that pretty much sets it in stone that Breath of the Wild 2 will not be an earlier release, but more likely a second half of the year release, and at that point might as well be a holiday title. So that's what I'm thinking right now, so I'm not expecting Breath of the Wild 2 news. Obviously I would love to see it. Breath of the Wild 2 is my most anticipated game alongside Metroid Prime 4, but the way things are coming together right now, it's really seeming like we're going to be getting a blowout for Splatoon 3 first before we get the blowout for Breath of the Wild 2. But there will be other Nintendo games discussed during this Direct. For example, everything that's coming out throughout the year. At the beginning of the video, we mentioned WarioWare and Metroid Dread. Both of those games will be featured during this Direct. The Direct will be coming out likely, in my opinion, early September to hype and push these games which are on the horizon. But then also Shin Megami Tensei 5, a big third-party game, I also think is going to be featured as well. That's going to need more eyes on it than maybe Metroid Dread or WarioWare because it's not a typical Nintendo game, but it is a big third-party exclusive that we've been waiting for a very long time. So Nintendo's definitely going to be giving it a big push in the Direct, in my opinion. Now, something we may not see during the Direct is Pokemon stuff. We just recently got a Pokemon Presents, and Pokemon Company didn't show us anything during E3 for Pokemon. So they're probably just going to be doing Pokemon announcements separate from the Direct. They usually don't really show off too much during Directs anyways, but sometimes they get a little bit of a mention. But that's usually during E3, usually almost certainly never during a September Direct. So I'm going to say probably nothing for Pokemon will be shown off during the Direct, but we will still be getting Pokemon news throughout the year. And of course, Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp will also probably be mentioned to some extent. It is coming out this December. And then going into January, we are getting Legends Arceus. Again, that's a Pokemon thing. We may not see too much mention of that. But for February and March, the last months of the fiscal year, I do think Nintendo will use this Direct to sort of tell us what's coming out around that time. I'm predicting that Splatoon 3 will be the March release. So that's one of the reasons why I think Splatoon 3 will be heavily featured during the Direct, but maybe we also see something in February. Now, I mentioned that we probably won't see anything for Breath of the Wild 2, but that doesn't mean we can't maybe see Twilight Princess HD or Wind Waker HD. Those potentially could be announced and they could come out in February in between Legends Arceus and in between Splatoon 3. Potentially, but there's also so many other options of games that they could have come out during that time. Maybe it isn't anything Zelda. Maybe they save Zelda for the end of the year, and that would be Breath of the Wild 2. Maybe we see that Kirby game that we mentioned earlier. Kirby usually comes out in the earlier parts of the year anyway, so February potentially could be the time we see the next big Kirby game, but they also could wait a little bit later into the year. We may not even see anything too major come out in February because Legends Arceus comes out at the end of January, so Nintendo may not need anything too major during that time. Maybe it's some sort of interesting third-party release. That's certainly a possibility as well. But since we're on the subject of third parties, there's a few other third-party games I'm sort of maybe hoping to see announced during this Direct. There have been those rumors for a Resident Evil game. I would love to see what Capcom could do with that re-engine for a ground-up exclusive Resident Evil on Switch. They used the re-engine for Monster Hunter Rise. It's one of the best looking games on Switch. It's incredibly impressive. It's a very fun game, one of my favorite games on Switch, and it is performing really well sales-wise. I'm sure Capcom probably wants to try their hand on Resident Evil for Switch. It may not be ready yet. Maybe we don't see it announced during the September Direct. But last year, we did get a big Capcom announcement for Monster Hunter Rise. So timing-wise, maybe they could also do something similar for Resident Evil this time. Maybe. But that's just a possibility. It may take a little bit longer before we see something new for the Resident Evil series on Switch. Another third-party announcement that I'm sort of kind of expecting to see is a Grand Theft Auto collection, actually. There is this rumor that's being pushed by Polygon. They're saying that there's going to be a Grand Theft Auto remaster collection. Now, it's going to be coming out for all different platforms, but that also will be including Switch. I wouldn't be surprised if it's announced during the Nintendo Direct and then it's announced for everything else on the same day on social media, but I think that could be a really nice announcement. Grand Theft Auto finally on Nintendo Switch. It's going to be only coming out on eShop according to the rumor, but still, it's going to be 3 remastered Grand Theft Auto games. It's supposed to come out by the end of the year. This would probably be the time that it would be announced. At this point, I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, there's a whole bunch of other Nintendo games I would love to see announced during the Direct. What could be announced? Usually Nintendo uses September Directs to sort of outline what's to come out and happen throughout the holidays leading up to the end of the fiscal year. So I do think we'll learn what's coming out in February and March during this Direct. But I also think we'll get some sort of surprise announcement, maybe two, for games to come out at some point next year, because we also usually see something like that during Directs as well. For example, Luigi's Mansion 3 was announced in a September Nintendo Direct, so maybe we see something of that scale announced during this Direct. So what would fit that sort of tier of Nintendo game? Well, a few franchises come to mind. Donkey Kong. It's been rumored for a while. I absolutely still believe it's real. It's simply a matter of time. From what I've heard, they aren't too far off from announcing it. It's really just when Nintendo feels like it's the right time to do it. Potentially, they could announce and start talking about Donkey Kong this September, hype it up, maybe it's an earlier release for 2022. That would be a very exciting game to see at some point next year, even if it's not an earlier release. It could be a later year release, but maybe they announce it in the September Direct. Another possibility is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. You guys may have heard of the rumors of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. We covered it on the channel recently. Supposedly, this game is very near completion. If it wasn't for COVID and all, it probably would have come out in 2021. But because of COVID, it won't be. But with that in mind, that would also suggest that it's not too far off, and we could still get an announcement for it fairly soon. Considering what's been going on with the Smash DLC and Pyra and Mythra and that special trailer and all, it could be the case that they had intended on sort of using that to sort of hype up the Xenoblade series, build up some momentum, and then announce the game. So we're still not too far removed from that, so maybe they announce Xenoblade Chronicles 3 during the September Direct to sort of take advantage of some of that remaining momentum there. I think it makes sense, and Xenoblade 2 came out in 2017, so, you know, it might be the right time for us to maybe get a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 announcement. Now, Model Self has been working on a new IP as well, so potentially they announced that instead. But based off the rumors, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 seems to be the one that's more ready to be announced right now, so we'll see. There are other potential announcements we can maybe see. I already mentioned Kirby earlier. I doubt we'll see an announcement for like Mario Kart 9 or Super Mario Odyssey 2 during this Direct. Those are the kind of games I would expect to maybe see announced early on in the year for a big holiday release or as a big E3 surprise. So I'm not expecting something of that sort of level, but still something like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 or Donkey Kong would be pretty amazing to see. One other option actually is Pikmin 4. That supposedly has been, in development for quite some time. There is supposed to be a Pikmin mobile game coming out by the end of the year. Maybe they want to tie in the marketing for that alongside Pikmin 4. So maybe we could see Pikmin 4 announced during this Direct. Just another possibility there. Oh, and there's actually a few other games that I haven't gotten to mention yet that could show up during the Direct. One is Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope. That's a game that was announced at E3, so potentially they could show that off during the Direct. It might be coming out sooner than later, maybe by the end of the fiscal year, maybe this February, so that's something that could be showing up. And then there's also Bayonetta 3, which has been in development since 2017, so you would think at some point or another they would show that game off again as well, and this time with actual gameplay. So I keep my eyes peeled for both of those franchises, but we'll see what happens. But with all of that said, I think that pretty much covers up my expectations and predictions for a September Nintendo Direct. I think we'll get one or two awesome surprise announcements from Nintendo, like a Xenoblade or a Pikmin or a Donkey Kong. I think Splatoon 3 will be the big focus. I think they'll announce a test fire. I think that we'll get some updates to Nintendo Online, maybe Game Boy Advance. I think there'll be a Smash reveal. I'm pulling for either Rayman, a Metroid character, or Master Chief. And I do think that if there is some sort of Microsoft and Nintendo collaboration, this would be the time to announce it. So that's what I'm sort of thinking we can maybe see during this Direct. I don't think it's going to be the most big, grandiose Direct of all time, but I also think it's looking to be a fairly solid one. But what do you guys think? What sort of expectations or predictions do you have for a potential September Nintendo Direct? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.